Welcome to Reinventors Roundtable. This is the place where we hold a conversation about the kind of big solutions that are truly up to the scale of the problems we face. And in America and the world's up against some big challenges, and one of the big defining ones is of course climate change. The whole idea here is reinventing adaptive cities. We've got a fantastic person here to lead us on this, Steffen.
There has been a certain amount of caution, maybe even over-caution, in estimating how much warming is going to occur. And we appear to be warming faster than we necessarily expected, but even more importantly, some very serious effects seem to be taking place already at just slightly warmer temperatures. Adaptation appears to be moving into a debate where it really doesn't make sense to think about the least we can do. And it makes more and more sense, it appears, to think about what we need to do to really prepare for a wide range of risks. It's about how do we respond to the climate change that's already going on and that we know will go on in the future.
There are moments in history when confronted by a big crisis, we do create that big change. Unfortunately, Hurricane Sandy wasn't a big enough crisis. What is almost crazy about this is that we had an incredible amount of foresight. We have been preparing for this, discussing this, for at least a solid decade. But I don't know if that necessarily means we're going to do anything about it.
Not only are we not tackling climate change head on, but the climate change we've already set in motion, from all the coal and oil we've burned and all the forests we've cut down, appears to be a much more serious risk than we have thought of.
I'm not very optimistic about things happening in DC or things happening very quickly. We did not really capitalize on Sandy as a way to really force some major rethinking in our federal policy.
One of the things certainly that made Sandy as bad as it was is that the sea is higher than it used to be.
What are the sea level rise and what are the impacts, and what are we going to need to do to adjust in terms of investments in infrastructure and shoring up our neighborhoods? For instance, our airport, which we know with a certain level of sea level rise will be underwater, what sort of sea walls and sea berms need to be put in place to shore up.
Your city is a Hawaiian island. If your city were cut off from supply chains, where are your largest vulnerabilities? Where would the impacts be greatest? Then those are the systems to focus on. When you get these kinds of systemic impacts to your whole food supply system or your whole electricity supply system, then you have widespread social and economic impacts.
Any place that has a good amount of political will and civic cohesion could, tackle a lot of these things.
We know the tools are there, and if you're in a city or a jurisdiction where people have decided, yes, we're changing, then that's great, but how do you create the will to change? And that comes back to this idea, I guess, of the risks we face.
But also, what are the kinds of avenues through which that will can actually be expressed in a given city?
This notion of centralized legacy systems can sort of collaborate and be complemented by decentralized approaches.
This climate change disaster is going to change the way we plan.
In order for a city or a larger jurisdiction, a state or federal government, to tackle these sorts of things, there needs to be a civic debate about them.
If we can continue to have this conversation as frequently as we're having it now over the next 20 years, I think we'll be well positioned. Hopefully it's not too late.
People would way rather talk about where they want to go than what they're trying to get away from.
I heard it put is that if you tried to sell motherhood based on the pain and suffering involved, that the population would plummet to zero very quickly, right? The open secret is not really how bad things are getting, but how good they could get.